DreAllDay.com.
You are now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is facts don't matter anymore. Before we get into this, I'll remind you of two things. Actually, I'll remind you of three things. First of all, my daily motivation, Monday motivation message guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day, your week, respectively. All you got to do is be a member of my texting community, which is free to join. My number is 305-384-6894. Send a text to that number right now. Once we start sending it again, you'll be getting those to your phone. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is the place where it goes down. If going down means working with me directly, getting access to all of our best trainings, all of our best courses, all of our best learnings and masterclasses and frameworks around mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability for full implementation in your business and your personal life. That all happens at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Long story short, if you like what you hear here on this show, then Work on Your Game University is the natural next step that you'll be taking. Third thing I want to tell you is that the day that I'm recording this, I just got cussed out by a GoPuff delivery driver. And I'm going to be doing a whole episode on this whole concept. And the reason I got cussed out by the delivery driver is because the driver was upset that the amount of tip that I left on an order that was literally like $18, they didn't like that I didn't leave enough of a tip, whatever they considered to be enough. But we're going to take care of all of that in a future episode. So I already got the notes written down for that. I can even tell you when you can expect that. That is about, so let's see. 1, 2, 3. This is about a couple weeks away. So maybe 2-3 weeks from now, you'll be hearing that episode. But anyway, that just happened like literally today, the day that I'm recording this. I just got cussed out by a GoPuff delivery driver. But anyway, now let's get into the topic of the day, which is facts don't matter anymore. Because it is a fact that this GoPuff delivery driver did not like the amount of tip that I left for her. And it is a fact that she cussed me out. But facts don't matter anymore. All right, that's what I just said. So the first person I heard say this and going to explain it in more depth, this whole concept that facts do not matter, was the author by the name of Scott Adams. He wrote a book called Win Bigly that came out shortly after Donald Trump's surprise to many win in the 2016 presidential election. Scott Adams is better known as the author of, actually he's not known, but his work is known. He used to write a comic strip. He still writes a comic strip called Dilbert. You remember the Dilbert comic strip? Especially those of you who used to read the newspapers back in the day. Dilbert was a nationally syndicated cartoon. And Scott Adams is the guy who created Dilbert. And again, most people didn't know who Scott Adams was. And when people, or let me say, people who are big fans of the Dilbert cartoon, they knew about Scott. I remember reading Dilbert in the newspapers, but I never looked deeply into the guy. It's not like I was enamored with the cartoon. But there are people who knew him from that, and he would write like Dilbert calendars, and he had all this brand extension based on Dilbert. And in 2015, 2016-ish, first of all, Scott had written other books on like personal development and personal growth. I didn't know about them, didn't really know much about him, period, or care to know about him until around 2015, 2016. Scott became very prominent on social media, specifically on what was then Twitter, now known as X, because Scott would get on Twitter, and when Donald Trump would do something and people started going crazy over what Donald Trump was doing or saying, whatever, or what they claimed he was doing or saying, was more often the case, Scott would get on Twitter and he would kind of explain and interpret what Donald Trump was doing in terms of persuasion, why it was a good thing that he did it or was a bad thing that he did it. And he was like the Donald Trump whisperer, kind of, so to speak, when I first came across Scott, because he was explaining what Trump was doing and why it was actually a good thing, even though it appeared to many of us, and it was being framed to us through the mainstream media, that what Donald Trump had just done or said or something like that, or something that got dug up from his past, was a bad thing. Scott was explaining why it was actually a good thing. I didn't actually believe him at first. I thought this guy is kind of like a Donald Trump apologist. That's what he appeared to be. However, once Donald, and also Scott Adams was the first person, one of the first prominent people. I think he goes on the record saying that he was the first, or maybe one of the first, to claim when Donald Trump put his name in a hat in 2015 for that 2016 presidency, he said Donald Trump's going to win. And most people thought he was crazy. Now, I'm bringing all of this up to help you understand that Scott Adams, because of his history with Dilbert. Dilbert was an extremely popular cartoon. It was in damn near every newspaper in America, especially the national newspapers and all the big market newspapers. And Scott Adams, based on the popularity of Dilbert and the brand extension, i.e., the money he had made from all the Dilbert related products that he had been selling over the years, Scott had made himself a good amount of money. He had made what he, in his own language, calls fuck you money. He had made that by the point he started talking about Donald Trump. He already had it. And Scott often would get booked to do, he would do a lot of speaking gigs, especially corporate speaking gigs, because the Dilbert cartoon it was like a parody of what happens in corporate America. So any of you who works in corporate, you know about Dilbert because the cartoon was a great parody of what happens in the corporate world. And Scott had worked in corporate himself. So he was very knowledgeable of the space. And he would get a lot of speaking gigs. And if you know anything about the speaking business, especially corporate speaking business, it's a good payday. So Scott had a healthy speaking business going up to that point when he started basically being the whisperer of Donald Trump and explaining why what Donald Trump was doing was actually good and it was going to help him rather than being bad. And because of this, and Scott wrote about this extensively, that when he started doing these things, he started losing a lot of his business connections, a lot of his business opportunities, a lot of his phone calls stopped being answered. The phone stopped ringing. He stopped getting speaking business. He basically got canceled out of the professional business world that he had previously been very prominent in just because of his messages concerning Donald Trump. And he has even said that had Donald Trump gone on to lose the 2016 election, Scott would have basically lost it all. He would have lost his career. He had lost his comic strip was no longer syndicated, and he was wrong about Donald Trump. But because Donald Trump won, it vindicated Scott. And now people who were either already supportive of Trump or leaning more in his direction started to want to hear what Scott had to say. And he picked up a huge audience of people who, once Donald Trump won, they said, oh, wait, this guy's been saying that all along. Okay, what does this guy know that we don't know? And I started following Scott more around the time that Donald Trump won because I knew that he was doing those things, but I didn't really pay much attention to after Trump won because I didn't think Trump had a chance. So Adams came out after the election with this book called Win Bigly, Bigly. And in that book, he talks about this whole concept that facts do not matter. Now, me, being an extremely logical individual, my friend Charlene likes to say, Dre, you are annoyingly logical. And I like that phrase because it's true. When I first heard this, I bristled at the concept. Facts don't matter. I like doing things based off of facts and knowledge and having the accurate information. I like that. That is one of my strong suits. So when Scott said facts don't matter, I said, wait a minute, this guy's threatening a lot of what I do when it comes to my style of communication. So I wanted to read this book to find out what exactly he was saying. And Scott was exactly right. And I'm going to explain my understanding of why facts don't matter anymore. And I've come to learn that this is 100% true now after reading Scott's book back then, which I've already referenced to you, and just the things that I've experienced over the last, let's say, 8 years since Donald Trump did win, even though I don't talk about politics nearly as much as Scott does. And the subtitle of his book, again, was Persuasion in a World Where Facts Don't Matter. So remember that phrase as we get into the masterclass here today. And in reading the book, I got a better understanding of what Scott meant and what he was saying and how he very eloquently contextualized and explained why someone like Donald Trump often plays fast and loose with factual information. I think we all can agree with that, even if you like Trump. He often plays fast and loose with facts. He'll throw things out that are not factually true. He will claim he's going to do things that he doesn't actually even have the presidential power to do. He will claim he's going to do stuff that sound good if you just listen to it on the surface, but if you actually understood what he was saying, it actually is either impossible or would actually be a bad idea. But all of it works in his favor. And how is this possible? And he was still able to win the election. He's still been the Republican nominee 3 times. As of this recording, the election has not happened yet of 2024, even though he doesn't always stick to the facts. And anytime I mention Donald Trump or Kamala Harris in any of my social media postings, the conversation always turns to Trump. So if I mention Trump, people talk about Trump, positive or negative. And if I mention Harris, people talk about Trump, usually in a negative way as a way to deflect from whatever I said about Harris. And very interesting. Nobody ever defends Kamala Harris. They just change the subject and talking about Trump. Anyway, the more it has made sense to me, the more that I understand the things I'm going to share with you here today. And it is also reflected in wider society, not just in politics and not just on any individual person. I already told you in a previous episode of this show that truth matters more than facts. If you haven't heard me talk about that, that was episode number, see if I can find it. That was episode number, first of all, 2379. Truth is truth and bullshit is bullshit. And then I've talked about truth on a bunch of different episodes. And I got to find it. It was episode number, here it is, 2737. Facts are not the truth. And in that episode, that's where I explained that truth is all the facts in full context, whereas facts can be handpicked and chosen and pulled out of context to basically paint any picture that you would like to paint. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. You can lie to people with facts. Very easily, you can lie with facts. So the full context makes truth. Now, everybody does this these days. Everyone's done it back in the days, and people are going to do it more in the new days, in the future days. And it is not limited to politicians, by the way. And it's not limited just to people who you dislike. Now, I often hear people frame a conversation to say something like, well, Democrats do this, or Republicans or MAGA people do that. And I say, well, you could take that exact framework, take the word Republicans out and put Democrats in there, and it would still be true. You're only seeing it through the lens of the people you dislike. And the people you love, they do the same thing. They take facts out of context and call the truth is not the truth. So today I'm going to explain to you why the value of factual information is continually decreasing. Sadly enough, it is. And why it will continue to decrease rather. The value of factual information will continue to go down. And again, this is all said by a person who I like being factual, logical, and rational when I make my points. I will still be factual, logical, and rational. But the value of factual information is disintegrating. It is. That's just the truth. And I'm going to be all three of these things, factual, logical, and rational, while sharing what I'm sharing here today with respect to this evolving reality. Point number one, topic once again is facts do not matter anymore. Number one, human beings have always been subject to strong persuasion, but now we are surrounded by strong persuasion. Any of you ever been hypnotized before? I don't think I am susceptible to hypnotism. I remember a hypnotist came to, I don't remember where, I think I was in college. A hypnotist came to our school, and the hypnotists are trained to be able to do this. And I believe Scott Adams himself is a trained hypnotist. And not Scott, but this hypnotist who came to my college once, he was asking for volunteers to be hypnotized. And he walked through the crowd and he's looking at people. And I guess he could tell just by looking at people who might be susceptible to hypnotism and who might not be. And he called like 7 to 8 people up there. And then he had them go through a little bit of an exercise. And he started sending people back to their seats if they weren't susceptible to the hypnotism. So the point being, hypnotists know who they can persuade and who they can't. But persuasion has always been a thing. Again, it's not that persuasion just started to be a thing now, but it has become more of a thing simply because we are hit with persuasive messages all the time these days, literally all day, every day, in everything we do. This is specifically because, first of all, the smartphones that we have, through which anyone can broadcast any message they want, and they do, at any time to anybody who's willing to consume it. And there are plenty of eyeballs, which means we can get our so-called facts from resources that have no credibility whatsoever, from people who could be completely lying to us. But if they make whatever they're sharing sound good, and they have it colored in emotions that we already want to accept, then we are easily deceived. Now, I want you to understand from what I just said in that sentence, this not only applies to the people who you think are too dumb to know the facts, it also applies to you. You are too dumb to know the facts too. Anytime someone says something that is persuasive enough to you and it touches the right emotional buttons in you, you will accept it even if it is factually false. And you will not do the work to figure out if this person who said it is credible or if the message they said is actually truthful. You will not do the work to figure that out. Why? Because you already want to hear it. They gave you what you wanted to hear. They told you what you wanted to believe. This is how people are easily deceived these days. And again, this is not a new thing when it comes to human nature. It's just that it's easier to get these messages out because we all have a broadcasting station in our pockets literally all damn day. And other people can publish to us all damn day, which means it's easier for you to get persuaded by nonsense today than it was 30 years ago because it's right there at your fingertips. And most of the time, nobody can control what you are consuming. This is why persuasion matters a lot more now than it did in the past. So in other words, think of some person or company who you strongly dislike, or a person or company who you even hate. If someone comes out with a fake story that sounds good about a terrible thing that that person or company did, how likely are you to believe it? You're probably going to buy it as soon as you hear it. Hook, line, and sinker. You're going to buy it immediately. Why? Because you don't like that person. So anything negative that's connected to that person, you're going to buy it. And if someone comes out with something positive about that person, you're probably going to, on the surface, reject it just because you don't like them. Now, does either one of those have anything to do with facts or the truth, or logic, or reason, or rational thinking? No, 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 and no. And guess what? You're going to accept it anyway because it connects with something that you already believe and you want to hear. This applies to every human being on the planet. No one is immune to this. Now, some people are more susceptible than others, but no one is immune to it. This is known as persuasion. This is persuasion. Persuasion is basically moving people to do things that they already know they want to do. They just need someone to help them make the decision. That's what persuasion is about in simple terms. This is how persuasion works. If you want to see it live and in action, I get on this app called X, used to be called Twitter, and engage in some of the political discourse, or just watch it. You will see people doing this all day. It's literally all day happening. People get misled with propaganda, and propaganda is a form of persuasion, by the way. The reason why propaganda works, and propaganda is basically either an outright lie, a fact taken out of context, or a half truth. That's how you define propaganda. Someone's just straight up lying to you and you believe in it. Someone taking a fact out of context, meaning they gave you a piece of the truth, but they didn't give you the whole truth. Or someone gives you like half of the truth. So they tell you one side of the story, but don't tell you the other side. It's kind of like your 5-year-old comes to you and tells you that Susie in the playground hit him and he's crying. So you look at Susie with a weird eye, but what he didn't tell you is the other side of the story, which is that he hit Susie first. She just hit him back. See, he didn't tell you that part. He only told you half of the story. And see, people are easily persuaded by that. And people will adopt stories in their own minds of half truths without even accepting in their own minds the full truth. And again, we are the easiest person to deceive is yourself. So many people, and again, I'm talking to a bunch of you listen to me right now, you have beliefs in your head that are completely based on propaganda that if you understood and accepted the full context, you would unbelieve some of the bullshit that you believe. But because you want to believe that bullshit, you're not even willing to hear anyone tell you that, hey, I may have some information that undoes some of the bullshit that you have accepted. You don't even want to hear it because you already believe you believe things that you like. Most of us don't have strong beliefs about things we dislike. Think about that. Now, do those things exist? Yes, they do. You just don't believe them because you don't want to hear it. See, it's very hard to get anyone to accept the full context of anything that they have already accepted the opposite of. If you already accepted that Donald Trump is a terrible person, you don't want to hear anybody explain to you why he might not be as bad as you think he is. You don't even want to hear it, let alone would you accept it. And flip that around to Kamala Harris or the Democratic Party or whatever group you happen to not like, Israel, Palestine, whatever. If you already have a strong opinion on one side, you don't want to hear the full context that would give you a better picture of the other side. This is the power of persuasion, is the reason why facts no longer matter. Because persuasion is happening all day, every day, and it's much easier to persuade someone with the tools of persuasion than it is to convince someone with the tools of factual information. Why? Because persuasion touches the emotions where logic and facts do not. And the emotion is stronger than logic on 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is why facts do not matter anymore. Number 2, the democratization of publishing has made it easy to create and consume your own chosen facts. This one has been going around for over a decade now. Once you get into a rabbit hole, let's say, of thinking a certain way, you can curate your social media consumption and your media period consumption in such a way that you are only hearing messages that further affirm and validate what you have already chosen to believe, even if what you have already chosen to believe is complete bullshit. You can consume so much of it. Remember how the subconscious mind is programmed through repetition, immersion, and emotionalization. So if you repeat the same message over and over again, even if it's a lie, if you're immersed in versions of the same lie and you are emotionally connected to that lie, guess what? You're going to believe it. And you will fight tooth and nail to defend it. Why? Because it's programmed into your subconscious mind. And again, no one is immune to this. I just explained this in the first point. Well, let's take it further. Most people live in mental ghettos through which they only consume things that they want to believe, what they want to hear, what they want to see, and what they want to engage with. So trying to open someone's mind, so to speak, with new or conflicting information that goes against the grain of what they have already chosen to accept and believe is an exercise in futility. Everybody hear what I just said? Most people live in mental ghettos where they don't want to hear anything other than what they already believe. Therefore, you trying to open their mind with information that goes against what they already believe is an exercise in futility. You will fail. It's not even worth trying. Don't waste your resources. There are a small handful of people who are open to such communication, a small handful who are open. It would take a lot of time and effort to figure out who those people are, and you'll burn a lot of energy trying and failing with too much of the wrong people, which constitutes 95% of the population. Most people come to believe certain things at a very young age in life before reaching adulthood, and they never change those beliefs through the end of their lives, regardless of how long they live. not because people are stupid, but because people are subconsciously programmed, and most people don't go looking for anyone or anything to disprove what they have already chosen to believe. I talked in episode number 3023 why you should follow and listen to people who you actually disagree with. And I explained in that episode why I do this exact thing. On X, which is the only app in which I engage with people in back and forth banter, I follow a whole bunch of people who I generally disagree with what they appear to stand on. And when I say appear to stand on, what I mean is how they present themselves publicly, what they talk about publicly. I don't know any of these people personally, but based on what they put out on a professional level, I generally disagree with their stances, but I follow them anyway because I want to know what they're saying. I want to know what they're up to, and I want to know what they are putting out there that is persuading others to believe things that I disagree with. Because the fact that I believe things on one side of a conversation does not mean the other side of the conversation does not exist. I want to know what that other side is talking about. I want to know from whom they're getting their information and why they have the beliefs that they have so I can better understand them, just in case I run into one of them and I need to beat them up with reality and beat them up with the truth. And again, they're thinking the same thing about me. Now, it doesn't mean that they're following people on the other side of the conversation, but they will want to beat me up with their truth. And there's no such thing as my truth and your truth. Notice I said the truth, not my truth, but the truth. So you have to be willing to disprove yourself. So if you really want to know if you know something, you got to be willing to disprove your own knowledge. And you have to be, the word is, disproving, I've talked about here on the show. I'm trying to find the episode where I talked about it, but there might be another word that I use. I'm trying to figure it out right now while I'm looking through my notes. But your job, let's just put it this way, whether or not I find this episode or not, is that anything that you strongly believe, you should consume material people who believe the exact opposite and find out why. Most people, again, believe things at a young age and never change their minds. This is the reason why I tell you that any growth that happens after puberty must happen intentionally, and how most people, if you haven't seen them since your teenage years, are still the same person they were back then. They just got older and uglier because most people do not grow intentionally. They don't try to, therefore they don't. Trying to change people's minds is an exercise in futility. Do not do it. Don't try to do it. I can't tell you not to do it. You won't do it, but you can try. I'm telling you not even to try. Okay. You want to look for ways to disprove your own knowledge or your own beliefs and make sure that you can stand on them even in the face of something that goes against it. But do not try to change somebody else's mind. Waste of time. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why facts do not matter anymore. Number 3, first impressions are lasting for most humans, and most humans are not critical thinkers. And let's think about why those two things matter. Combined, why they matter when combined. First impressions are lasting for most humans. In other words, the first thing someone consumes or accepts or chooses to believe about a thing, usually they don't change it. And most people are not critical thinkers, which means most people do not question their own beliefs. They just defend their beliefs. They don't ever question their beliefs, and they won't stand for letting anybody, like me or you, question their beliefs. Therefore, the first thing people came across around some subject, that is what they will always believe, and they will never change their mind. Period. That's it. Once an opinion is formed, a person will hold to that opinion tooth and nail, regardless of anything thrown at them. So if the persuasive lie gets to them first, think about the mainstream media. If a persuasive lie gets to you before anything else gets to you, you probably will not change your mind from believing that lie, even no matter how much counter information gets thrown at you. You're never going to change your mind because you got a first impression, you accepted that, and you're not a critical thinker, so you're not willing to challenge your own thoughts. That's what happens. So if the persuasive lie gets to a person first and it appeases their emotions, no amount of factual information will change that belief. This is why it's a complete waste of time to go back and forth arguing with people on the internet when they're on the opposing side of you on any specific topic, because they're not going to change their mind any sooner than you are going to change yours. Purpose of when I go back and forth with people on social media, sometimes it is in disagreement. It's not because I am trying to change their mind. I just told you that's an exercise in futility. I'm not trying to change their mind. I am just stating logically and rationally, at least I think I'm being logical and rational, as to why my position is more accurate than their position with respect to the topic. Now, again, they might be thinking the same thing. They don't always. Sometimes I'm going back and forth with someone on there and they're just trying to personally attack me while I'm attacking their point. Many people just don't have the internal fortitude to stay on the point rather than turning personal, because most people are much more emotionally driven than logical driven. But I just told you at the beginning of this episode, I'm annoyingly logical. A term that I accept that label. So I do so, again, when I engage with people, not with the intention of changing their minds or setting them straight. That's not my goal. is with the intention of pointing out the flaws in their arguments and the flaws in their framings. Also, being that these are public conversations, it influences the intention of others. So I'm not doing it just so I can talk to this random one person, Fly Guy 2304 on Twitter. Right? I don't know who this guy is, but it's a public conversation. So the thing that I say to him and the thing that he says to me, everybody can see it. And when people see the quality of the logic and rational and what's the word? The logic and the rationality of my arguments, I'm being kind of tongue in cheek when I say that. They say, "Oh, I like this guy, Dre Baldwin. Never heard of him before, but let me follow him." And that's how I get people to follow me on social media on that app. On the other apps, I don't do any of this. So those are not my strategies on any other app. But on X/Twitter, that's the reason, that's the way that I'm able to build my following. By just having open conversations with random people about either something that they said or something that I said, or a back and forth exchange that we have. People like the way that I'm talking, they decide to follow me. That's how I build my following. So if you want to know how I build my following on X, I just told you. And again, that's the only app in which I will engage in back and forth with people in the comments. So I do all this stuff again to point out the flaws in their framing, which is often easy. Now, others, again, they notice it. And let me put this another way. I would not have these same conversations with these same people in private because I gain nothing. One of the ways that I make a lot of my content, I've talked about this before and I'll talk about it in the future. And actually, I know I have an episode coming up that will, I think I have it here. Yeah, let me see. Yes, I have an episode coming up. Actually, it's coming up tomorrow, I believe, if I'm reading my notes correctly, and I think I am reading my own notes correctly. I wrote this. So I have, let me see, 1, 2, do I have this right? 3, yes. So tomorrow's episode, I'm going to tell you a story about something just like this. And let me get back to where I was here. I'm just looking at my notes, making sure I'm giving you all the right information here. Yes. I don't have, if I do have, I won't say I don't have, but if I do have a conversation in private that I think there's something useful in it that the public should know about, and when I say the public, I mean my audience, people like you who are listening to this right now, I will take that same conversation and I'll explain it publicly so that everybody besides just the person I was talking to can get value from it. And often the person I was talking to doesn't get value from it because they don't agree with me or they don't believe me or they refuse to accept what I'm telling them. Tomorrow's episode, I'm going to explain, you're going to see in full color exactly what I mean by this. But tomorrow's episode will be fun when I got another story to tell you. Anyway, I make the majority of my content based on things that I see other people believing, saying, doing, thinking, or asking, whether directly to me or of others. And I, instead of talking directly to that one person, or instead of only talking directly to that one person, answering their issue or need or challenge, I will also make content out of it so that the others who have the same question or challenge, or maybe they don't even know you have this question or challenge, once you hear it, you're like, oh, you know what? That is a good point. I'm glad Dre brought that up. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good thing he brought up. Now I know it. I can expand your knowledge. So this is how I create a lot of my material. Even though I may not change somebody's mind, and I doubt I'll ever change the mind of another person. That's pretty hard to do, especially when someone already has the opposite opinion. I can influence people who hear me talk and they like the way that I frame things because they may be in more agreement with my position. So see, when I have the conversation publicly, I'm not changing the mind of the person I'm talking to, but I can get other people who already see things my way, but maybe they couldn't put the words together the way that I do. They don't have the platform that I have. They will follow me because they like the way that I'm doing it. I also don't have a problem with people opposing me or throwing insults or negative comments my way. That stuff doesn't bother me because I've been online for 20 years and there's nothing you can say to me in a comment that I haven't heard before. But many of you who may not be open to such things, you should stay away from these conversations. All right, they will only stress you out, and especially on a platform like X and or any platform in which you are engaging in commentary on social issues, i.e., politics, gender, race, violence, death, medicine, education, things, anything, especially established bureaucracies and things like that. You go challenging those things, like I talked about the medical system, the educational system, politics. If you go challenging those things, understand you're stepping into a contact sport. All right, this ain't golf, this ain't tennis. It's a contact sport, like football, all right, rugby football, not rugby football, American football, boxing is that kind of sport. So if you want to get in this game, understand what you're stepping into. All that said, let's recap today's class, which is facts do not matter anymore. Again, shout out to Scott Adams. I've been on Scott Adams' podcast, as a matter of fact, or his live stream years ago. And he's the one who wrote a book called Win Bigly. He was the first person I heard say that persuasion matters more than facts these days. And he was 100% correct. Point number one, Humans have always been subject to strong persuasion. What is crazy now is that we have access to being persuaded right on our smartphones all day, every day. So it happens all the time. Number two, the democratization of publishing has made it easy to create and consume your own chosen facts. In other words, you can go down a rabbit hole of anybody or a group of people who believe anything that you believe, and you can basically inoculate yourself from hearing anything other than just that. You can just put yourself in a little cave, and the only thing you hear are people who agree with what you already believe, and you will hear it so often. Repetition, immersion, emotionalization, it programs your subconscious mind. You will never accept anything other than that. Point number three, first impressions are lasting, and most humans are not critical thinkers. Therefore, the first thing people hear or accept, they will accept, they will defend it forever. And because most people are not critical thinkers, they're not willing to have their beliefs challenged, even if their beliefs are based in complete bullshit. So again, don't try to change another person's mind. It's a waste of time. Instead, if you have something you need to say to a person and they won't listen, make content about it and tell the whole world. Maybe the people who want to hear it will hear it. That's what I would do. And that is what I do. And tomorrow, I got a good story coming for you. So make sure, workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's the place where I do all my coaching. You want to have me as your direct coach. We do a lot of things. All right, besides what we're talking about here. When we talk about leadership, we talk about selling, we talk about business building, we talk about doing it online, talk about doing it offline, we talk about having a sales conversation, closing deals, selling high ticket products. You want to get on stage and speak. You want to get online and sell books. You want to make courses. You want to get out of your full-time 9 to 5 and build a business around what you love, so you can kick that 9 to 5 to the curb. You can fire the job instead of the job firing you. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all